The safety net disappears. The school system is purposefully designed to stop you from failing. If your grades slip, a teacher pulls you aside, sends a letter to your parents, and puts you in mandatory tutoring. There is an entire safety net built to catch you the second you start messing up. But the day you graduate, that safety net disappears. As an adult, you can gain 40 pounds, max out 3 credit cards, and completely isolate yourself from everyone you know. And no one will say a thing. There are no parent-teacher conferences for your bank account or your physical health. Nobody sends a warning letter when your savings hit zero. No counselor schedules a check-in when you haven't left your apartment in 2 weeks. The reality school never prepares you for is that in the real world, you can completely ruin your life in slow motion over several years, and nobody is going to step in to stop you. The system that spent 18 years protecting you from your own mistakes graduates you and immediately stops caring. You just fail. No A for effort. At some point in school, a teacher looked at your barely finished essay and gave you a B because you clearly tried hard. That was the kindest lie anyone ever told you. The real world does not grade on effort. It grades on outcomes. You can work 80 hours on a project that fails and receive exactly the same credit as someone who did nothing, and that's absolutely zero. Nobody in your professional life will pull you aside and acknowledge the hours you logged or the difficulty of what you attempted. Clients don't pay for effort. Employers don't promote based on commitment alone. The market only asks one question: did you solve the problem or didn't you? School trained you to believe that visible effort earns protection from consequences. Hard work feels like it should count for something, and in a classroom, it does. Outside of it, effort without results is just expensive activity, and nobody is going to give you partial credit for it. Loyalty is not rewarded. If you started your career at a company and stayed there, worked hard, and never caused problems, you probably assumed the company would eventually take care of you, promote you, or raise your salary so it's at least comparable to what the same company is offering new hires right now. Companies calibrate compensation at the moment of hire and raise it incrementally year over year, while the external market moves on its own schedule. The result is that a loyal employee with 5 years of institutional knowledge often earns meaningfully less than someone hired into the same role today with none. The company isn't punishing your loyalty. It simply has no financial incentive to correct the difference on its own. Raises happen when you have leverage, and the most reliable source of leverage is a competing job offer. Job hopping isn't necessarily a character issue. For a significant number of people, switching employers every few years is the only realistic mechanism for salary growth that keeps pace with the market. School taught you that commitment and consistency earn recognition. In corporate environments, sometimes the only thing that forces a company to pay you what you're worth is demonstrating that you're willing to walk. Competence gets you more work. There is an unspoken rule in every workplace that nobody tells you during orientation. The faster and better you do your job, the more of other people's jobs you will also end up doing. In school, finishing early meant free time. You completed the assignment, you sat back, and the teacher left you alone for the rest of class. That was your reward. The workplace runs on the opposite logic entirely. When you prove you can execute quickly and cleanly, you become the person managers reach for every time something needs to actually get done. That sounds like a compliment. What it looks like in practice is your underperforming coworker's backlog appearing on your desk with a note that says, "Since you have time." The solution isn't to slack off. It's to make sure that competence comes attached to compensation, advancement, or opportunities that actually benefit you. High performers who don't negotiate what their output is worth end up doing twice the work for the same pay as the person next to them who does half as much. You have to make your results work for you, because the organization will happily let you do it for free. There is no syllabus. For the first 18 years of your life, someone else decides exactly where you need to be and when. One day you get a diploma, and the schedule just stops. There are no more instructions, just a blank calendar and the vague suggestion that you figure it out. Nobody tells you that without a structure forcing your progress, you have to become the architect of your own goals. School handed you milestones automatically. Midterms, finals, moving up a grade level. You always knew where you stood and what came next. In the real world, if you don't actively set specific targets for your career, your finances, or your personal growth, the default is stagnation. You can't just show up and expect to level up automatically. Without building your own daily structure and defining what your next milestone is, time just slips away. The people who thrive after school aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They just figured out how to manufacture their own structure. They set their own deadlines, build their own milestones, and hold themselves accountable to a timeline nobody else is watching. If you don't learn how to define your own goals and build a system to reach them, you'll look up at 30 and realize that while you were waiting around for the next assignment, everyone else figured out the game and completely passed you by. It's hard to make friends. In school, you were locked in a room with the same 30 people for 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. Friendship was almost inevitable. After you graduate, you're not around anybody anymore. So where the heck are you supposed to find friends? Nobody warns you that adult friendship depends on something school provided automatically: repeated, unplanned contact with the same people over time. Once that structure disappears, you have to manufacture it deliberately. The gym requires you to approach a stranger and start a conversation with no obvious reason to. Church is the same. Most neighborhoods run on a policy of friendly waves and zero follow-through. And if you work from home, even the low-grade familiarity of seeing coworkers daily is gone. Making a genuine adult friend is a logistical operation requiring persistence, follow-through, and a tolerance for awkward initiation that school never once asked of you. Adults consistently underestimate how much effort it actually takes and end up far lonelier than they expected because they keep waiting for friendship to happen the way it used to when they were younger, completely by accident. Knowledge isn't everything. School is all about knowing things. Memorize enough facts, pass the test, and you win. But the second you graduate, you discover that memorizing things is completely useless because every fact in human history is already sitting on a smartphone in everyone's pocket. Knowledge doesn't make you special anymore. The only thing the real world actually rewards is execution, taking that information and physically doing something with it. You can watch 500 hours of tutorials on how to code or read 50 books on how to start a business, but if you never actually build the app or launch the company, your knowledge is literally worthless. The person who knows very little but acts on it gets paid. The person who knows everything but never takes action might be great to have around on trivia night, but little else. In a classroom, knowing the answer is the finish line. In life, it's barely the start. A person who knows exactly how to get in shape but never goes to the gym gets the exact same results as someone who doesn't even know what a dumbbell is. Knowing without doing is just a more sophisticated version of doing nothing, and school spent zero time teaching you where to actually begin. Popularity is overrated. Somewhere around 9th grade, you decide that your job is to make sure everyone approves of you. Every decision gets filtered through that lens. Then you realize that the people who actually get what they want aren't the ones everyone likes. They're the ones willing to disappoint people. Approval seeking is a habit, and like most habits formed early, it keeps running long after the environment that created it has changed. In high school, being universally liked had genuine utility. It was the ultimate social currency that dictated your status and made everyday life easier. In adult life, the same pattern produces someone who can't say no, can't hold a boundary, and chronically deprioritizes their own needs to keep everyone else happy. That's not kindness. That's a strategy that stopped working the day you graduated and just never got updated. Setting a firm boundary and actually enforcing it is not a social risk. It's information about how you operate, and it signals a level of self-respect that tends to attract more of it from others. The people worth keeping in your life will adjust to it. The ones who push back were only comfortable because you never had one to begin with, and their discomfort with your new policy is itself very useful information. There's no one right answer. Every test you ever took had an answer key somewhere. There was one correct response, and you got very good at finding it. The problem is that nothing you'll face as an adult comes with a cheat sheet, and the people who keep looking for one are the ones who never actually decide anything. School conditioned you to believe that if you just study hard enough, you can pick the right option with zero downsides. But adult decisions don't come with scoring rubrics. You are rarely choosing between a clearly right answer and a wrong one. Instead, you are choosing between different sets of trade-offs. Every career path, every relationship, and every major life change comes with a tax. If you take the high-stress, high-paying job, the tax is your free time. If you choose the safe, comfortable route, the tax is your long-term growth. There is no flawless, penalty-free option. People who were trained to find the correct answer completely freeze when they realize every available choice has a downside. Because in a classroom, a downside meant you got the question wrong. The actual survival skill you need is the ability to look at incomplete information, pick the trade-off you can live with, and move forward. You aren't choosing the perfect answer anymore, you're just choosing your favorite problem. Asking for the answer isn't cheating. You spend 13 years learning that you have to do your own work. then you enter a world where that's the slowest way to succeed. In school, working independently was a virtue enforced by policy. In the workplace, the people who climb fastest are usually the ones who identified who already knew the answer and went and asked them, not to copy their work, but to compress the timeline between not knowing and knowing. Nobody gets fired for asking a senior colleague how they'd approach a problem. Nobody gets marked down for learning from someone with more experience. What actually stalls careers is people spending weeks independently reinventing a solution that someone 10 feet away has already worked out and would have happily explained in 15 minutes. The entire concept of mentorship, management, and senior roles exists because accumulated knowledge is meant to be transferred down. A junior employee who asks questions learns in days what would otherwise take months of trial and error. School spent years accidentally convincing you that asking for help was a weakness, or basically admitting that you were dumb. In practice, the people advancing the fastest are the ones who figured out that other people's experience is the cheapest education available, and they use it without apology. The company doesn't care. When you started your first real job, human resources probably seemed like the helpful, neutral party, the people you go to when something goes wrong. The name even sounds supportive. It's not. Human resources exist to protect the company, not you. That isn't a cynical reading of the situation, it's the actual function of the department. When you bring a complaint to HR, you're bringing it to a team whose job is to manage risk and liability for your employer. They may resolve your issue. They will do so when resolution serves the company's interests and not primarily because you deserve it. School conditioned you to see institutional support systems as being on your side. Counselors, advisors, and teachers generally were. HR is a legal and compliance function wearing a friendly name. That doesn't mean HR is useless to you. It means you use it strategically, with a clear understanding of whose interests the department is actually organized around. Document things. Know your rights independently. Don't treat a conversation with HR like a session with your old school counselor. They aren't your therapist. They're the company's defense attorney, and you need to treat every conversation with them accordingly. Nobody knows what they're doing. At some point as a kid, you looked around at the adults running things and assumed they possessed some magical blueprint, experience, and confidence you were still waiting to develop. Reality is, they're just as confused as you are now. Every competent-looking adult is operating with incomplete information, making educated guesses, and adjusting course when those guesses inevitably go wrong. Projecting confidence is just a survival skill, not evidence that confidence is warranted. CEOs, politicians, your bosses, and yes, even your parents are all just improvising at varying levels of sophistication, and most of them are doing it while desperately hoping nobody notices they are making it up as they go. Once you actually internalize that, two things change. First, you stop waiting for the day you finally feel ready to take a risk, because that feeling isn't coming for anyone. And second, you stop looking at authority figures as if they possess some secret genius that you lack. They don't. The distance between you and the people running the world is a heck of a lot smaller than you think. The school system spent 13 years preparing you for a world that doesn't actually exist. They built an artificial environment where effort was rewarded and someone was always coming to save you. Out here, none of that applies. And this is only half of it. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss part 2.